Welcome to the Nissan Ariya Platinum Plus E-Force. So this is the big spec, big battery pack, the nicest trim level. We've actually had the Venture Plus front wheel drive version, full build quality video here on Out of Spec Detailing. But I had a lot of comments saying you need to check out the full Mac Daddy one, and here we have it. So this thing tops at $62,770. Quite a big ask for this car in particular. We're going to be comparing it a little bit with an ID.4 today and a Tesla Model Y behind you. Welcome back to another Out of Spec Detailing video. Let's get into it.
So Colton, a few weeks ago I watched on this channel your Venture Plus review, which was the large battery Nissan Ariya, but in front wheel drive trim in a relatively basic interior, cloth seats, a few other things. And yeah, noticed the comments as well saying, hey, you really got to check out the nice one, because everyone was saying we'd be really impressed with it. And there's a lot to be impressed with this vehicle right off the bat. It's actually my first time seeing the Nissan Ariya in person. I've played around with pre-production models. Technically, this one is pre-production, which we do have to make a caveat of. But it is production representative, more or less, where there's almost no difference between this and a new one, except for, as much as I can work out, the color. I went on the configurator to try to build this car. Not possible. You cannot build it in red. So where'd the red come from?
I don't know, but it's a great color.
And that would just be for the Platinum version, which this has absolutely everything. And typically, Platinum Nissans are pretty rare. I'm thinking about the Armada as an example. You can get the maxed out one, but this is a very low volume trim level, but it does have everything. So it's actually kind of cool to contrast with what you saw. But I do have to say, Nissan, if you're watching this video, what the heck are you doing with your trim selection? You have Evolve, Venture, Engage, Platinum. I don't know which is better than which, except for Platinum being the best one. I have no clue what the middle trims mean.
It's all over the place.
It's insane.
We were just looking at it, and it's so confusing because like the lowest trim small battery pack seems to have better trim than the
base in the
it's
all-wheel
just
drive.
like
I don't know.
all over the place. So we were both kind of chuckling, confused. But yeah, this is the big spec here, and really curious to see, because the inside, I just think the thing that comes down to me is this is such a huge ask on price point, nearly $63,000 for this car. Comparing it to ID.4 Model Y, I think you're going to see some interesting things, especially on the inside.
And it's important to note, not every Nissan Ariya is going to be 63 grand. Most are going to be in that 50,000-ish price range. But this does have quite a bit of tech in it with Nissan ProPilot. It's got a big battery pack, mid 80 kilowatt hours, 87, I think. Kilowatt hour usable, 91 kilowatt hour gross. But then, not that we're getting into the EV nerdy topics right away, that'll be on out of spec reviews. It only has a 30 amp onboard charger and only 135 kilowatt DC fast charging. So for me, it's a bit of a non-starter as a $60,000 vehicle, because they've sort of spec'd the electric components to work for, let's say, 90% of your use case. But on a $63,000 vehicle, it needs to do 100% of your use case, because this is not a second car that you're going to own. This is your one and only transportation device. And unfortunately, it just doesn't hold up in the electrification department. So it doesn't matter. I haven't driven it yet. To me, how good it drives or how good it looks, which I think it's a great looking package, it cannot do the road tripping thing. 135 kilowatt DC charging, not there. I was also going through the menus, and there's a battery cooling menu in a totally different place than the battery heating menu. Like, this doesn't make sense. So Nissan, this car came to production very late, years after it should have been here. It would have been competitive, in my opinion, if it launched alongside the ID.4 3 years ago now. And here we are. It's way too expensive, and the just numbers on paper aren't there. And so for me, it's a non-starter. But I think to do our viewers a real service, we need to compare this to the ID.4, to the Model Y back there, also in red, and just do a quick, maybe 30-minute video walking around talking about fit and finish and feel.
And I think that's the big thing with this Ariya. I think aesthetically looks really nice. I actually find that the interior looks nice. So when you start touching and feeling things, is my opinion, it really starts, degrading that, especially that huge price ask, as, the ID.4 over here is nearly $10,000 less than this car, and you get a tax credit. This is not tax credit available. So like, this is a huge range you're paying for when,
Yeah, almost $20,000.
Yeah.
I mean, again, if you compare the one trim down from this, I don't know what it's called, Venture Engage, whatever the nicest non-platinum is.
Yeah.
Then maybe you're still, let's just say, $8,000 to $10,000 with that tax credit difference, because the platinum's quite expensive and you don't actually get that much in the platinum.
Right.
Typical Nissan fashion. But I do want to show the viewers very quickly. Look at how nice this interior looks. This bronze accents with this blue Napa leather and this Alcantara on the dashboard. This is a stunning looking interior, Colton.
Oh, totally agree. And I kept referencing in my first video I did how different vibes of other cars come out in this car. I get really much BMW iX vibes from the steering wheel, the center console, how everything's kind of laid out. The outside, kind of the rear end, looks a little Lexus-like to me. I think there's a lot of good things here, but again, when you jump inside, you start touching everything, I think is really when you start to degrade that price point that they're asking. You know, they've added a lot of nice stuff like suede here, Napa leather, which I think is a really interesting choice in this EV market, because a lot of people are going to this vegan leather, which for all you guys, that is essentially a vinyl synthetic material, which I actually prefer and feel like it wears a heck of a lot better.
Well, we were just talking about, we were just in the Rivian R1T, which is, you know, not even closely related to this vehicle, but whatever material Rivian puts on their seats, everyone should use.
100%.
Because it feels rugged-ish, but still premium, and has not wrinkled an inch.
No.
I mean, not even anything. And here, actually, it's funny. Come on in. I can already see, this car has 1,000 miles on it. I can already see impressions in the leather starting to form all the way from down here onto the side. And this is a very lightly used vehicle. So Napa leather is the worst wearing material in a car. It looks and feels nice when it's new. After a year, they get greasy. They feel like crap. And I hate leather in cars.
Yeah, I totally agree. And from a detailing perspective, they're a lot harder to clean and maintain, you know, lots of conditioning. And that's when you really start to get into this kind of unfortunate part where people put armor all in there. It degrades the leather, it makes it shiny, and it doesn't feel good. But
so what did you think of the base seats in comparison to this? Because you saw the cloth.
Yep. I mean, personally, not a fan of cloth whatsoever.
Okay.
I think cloth should just be like not part of automotive vehicles like at all, other than like dashboard areas and stuff. I really stress, I think this was a big nitpick with mine of the EV6 GT, the use of Alcantara and suede on seats, high impact points, stuff does not wear well. If you guys have ever seen like a Porsche with a full Alcantara wheel, literally within a year, the thing is greasy, disgusting, matted down. It just doesn't, it's not a good material to wear, and I think that's what you're seeing in here.
But then there was also a middle interior option, which is leatherette.
Yep, which is like exactly what we have in the ID.4. This is their leatherette, which is, I think, more of that vinyl synthetic material. They don't go with the vegan leather name.
And I think that's what most Arias will have.
I would totally agree.
And so that's good. We just haven't had a chance to see that yet.
Right.
So it would be kind of cool. So we brought along the other cars here as well to talk about door thunk sounds, feeling of things. What did you want to do with these two in sort of the context of the Ariya?
So I think big things I want to look at is interior material feel. Point out some areas that I've noticed just walking around the car, feeling it. This is, of course, my ID.4. We live with this thing. I know how it feels. Obviously Tesla, been around a lot of Teslas. I have a Model 3, so know how those feel. I personally feel like this is the cheapest feeling interior out of the three of these. That's just my impression.
It's the most expensive car here. Does have the biggest battery pack. But why don't you say we start in the least expensive car?
Yep.
And then we'll go up to the Tesla, which is a little bit more than the ID.4. And then we'll go up into the Ariya. Because the Tesla is what, 55 grand? 57?
Yes, so you can actually get I was looking at this, you can get a Y Performance for cheaper than this car.
Oh, no way.
Plus a tax credit.
Oh, well.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's
Why are we even making this video?
Yeah, what do you need to know?
I really don't want to do this car a disservice. I do want to genuinely evaluate the materials, because there are a surprising number of Nissan Ariya enthusiasts who watch our videos. I haven't driven it yet, so I can't quite figure out why. But perhaps maybe the interior will feel nicer to me than you.
Sure.
We've already found some things that I like more than you do. So the ID.4 is the cheapest car here, at least out of these three. So we'll have the camera operator sit in the back. You sit in the driver's seat. I'll take passenger. And let's start touching and feeling things.
Sure. Well, welcome to my somewhat dirty Volkswagen ID.4. We've got dogs in here all the time, but I really find that this is a really, really nice place to be. Seats, you sit so low in it. I love all the materials in here. There's a few things we've done to this car. Number one, I don't know if Alyssa can show this over here. These are gloss black, and one of my biggest things as a detailer, having gloss black areas, especially in high impact touch points. This thing was like literally a magnet for dog hair, fingerprints, scratches, so had to cover those up. So just if you're seeing that, it's a little bit different than what you're seeing, but I don't know. Kyle,
Do you like these?
I absolutely love them.
I really hate them.
Really?
I really do.
Okay, fair enough.
I think they look so stuck on, and like
Yep.
I can see the black piano black through it, and I wish they had a replacement panel rather than a cover.
Totally agree. The thing with these when I bought them, not to go on a huge tangent, these are from Norway, or not Norway, the Netherlands. So they have a little bit different fit and finish over there on these cars. This is a Chattanooga car, of course, so they don't fit perfect, but compared to gloss black, I'm like all day over that.
At a glance, it looks fine, but that's not production representative.
Sure, of course.
I agree. I like the ID.4 seating position the best after spending time in both, mostly because you can sit on the ground, which is just what you want as a driver, as a passenger, to feel in the vehicle, not on top of the vehicle. If you need to see more, you can, of course, raise your seat. But, you know, just from the passenger seat, you know, I have plenty of leg room going across. It's not an open floor like the Ariya. And the Ariya, I can reach over and hit the accelerator pedal. We'll talk about that. Armrests are exactly where I expect them to be. There's nothing fancy going on here. I actually prefer the early ID.4s with the manual armrests, but everyone complained, and so they made the car more boring, I think, going with the Chattanooga spec. The one big downside to ID.4, not for me, but for most people, is this. They hate the sliders, they hate the UI, they hate that this is not backlit, which I can agree with, but I think for me, I'm so comfortable with this system. I know know it in my sleep that I can just all I really need to do is swipe down, go traction control off, and then I'm good.
Pretty much. From my perspective on this car, software has not been a huge issue. I don't have a ton of gripes with this. Honestly, we just use Apple CarPlay on this. Works fine. Wireless. It's okay. It's not great. I find a lot of our settings get lost in this car. My seating position, it feels like every time changes a little bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, weird stuff like the ambient lighting in my wife's profile will go from she's got it all color coordinated and then it goes white next time she gets in the car.
So just bugs.
Yeah, just little bugs, but like overall, it's been good. Is it anywhere near a Tesla? 100%, not even close.
No one is.
It's not even close. But fit and finish in here, I feel like it feels very German, first off.
Very German. I would say inexpensive in places where you're not going to touch. But the steering wheel is unbelievably good.
It's incredible.
Best steering wheel almost in the business, actually. It feels great. It's a nice leather around. And really everywhere that you would put your hands and feet, to me, always felt way more premium than it had to be. You know, sometimes, and that's always been the case for Volkswagen with me, and there's a very Volkswagen plasticky thing that I kind of like, which is, you know, just different shades of black and gray, but it's not offensive. You get little touches where they went above and beyond where, again, your body's going to touch. The seats are really nice. I've done road trips. You get a massage function in the seat, which is a basic massage, but it still does what it needs to do. And I would say my only real gripe with ID.4, again, we're not talking tech specs or charging or anything like that. This is just fit and finish. My only real gripe with this car is the sound system. It sucks.
Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah.
It is by far out of these three the worst. And honestly, in a lot of cars that I've been in, one of the worst sound systems. It's just like not a lot of bass, not a lot of mids. It's just very bleh.
And it runs out of steam early. Like when you get to 60% volume, between 60 and 100 makes no difference. And thankfully it doesn't allow the speakers to blow out really, but when a bass hits, you can feel it pull down the highs and just runs out of power. So, you know, ID.4 has this character, this personality that I really loved when it launched. I still do. That's why I recommend the car often. However, I still think Volkswagen has a long way to go with, you know, really finishing the job, getting the sound system in. And it sounds like 2024 is going to have some nice upgrades, sound system, UI, things that bug us. They're like, okay, let's get this fixed going forward. So I'm really looking forward to testing this when it gets its refresh.
I think UI, I mean, just from EV nerd talk, no preconditioning in here, like just little creature comforts you get in a Tesla that are just like way, way better. But we wanted a different experience, and to be honest, I really have fallen in love with this car. Love driving it. It drives so nice. I feel like it, it's a normal Volkswagen product.
It's a very quality product, and you get such quiet cruising down the highway.
Yeah.
Definitely quieter than a Model Y.
100%.
The door thunks are the best out of the three, and we'll do a door thunk test on all three here in a little bit. But to me, it's just a solid quality piece of engineering. They know what they're doing. The software, they don't know what they're doing.
No, 100%.
Let's go to the Model Y, where it's kind of the opposite.
Yeah. So here we have a Model Y, literally delivered yesterday, which is quite crazy. So this is a Fremont-built car, no ultrasonic sensors on this. Price point on this is substantially less than the Nissan Ariya in this trim level. Even like I said, Y Performance, which is crazy, is cheaper than that Ariya.
Than that specific trim. And this is a long range, all-wheel drive, of course. And, Model Y is sort of the benchmark in this category, especially qualifying for the tax credit, especially with all of the software and the integration and everything it can do. However, there are things just right off the bat the Volkswagen does better. It just feels like a more cohesive, more solid product, in my opinion. But then when you start factoring in everything else the Model Y can do, especially with the new pricing, this is sort of pretty amazing. I still think they ride too firm, even with the comfort suspension. And they've definitely tried to decontent the car in certain places to save on cost. Ultrasonic sensors being a blatant issue, I think. Let's jump inside and see how it feels in there. And before we do that, can we talk about how the doors open?
Yeah, so these are really different. Obviously, we have a lot of Teslas. You have two yourself. I've got one. These feel very, very different from what they have even a couple of months ago. And actually, the first time I noticed this, and you noticed this as well, was on my dad's Model 3 Performance. We both grabbed the door handles and went, wow, this feels really different. It almost pops the door out, if you will. A lot of them, you really had to pull on it. So different mechanisms they're using. That's really funny what Tesla does too. It's not like ID.4 or a normal manufacturer that uses year increments. When they get new parts in, they throw them on the car immediately.
It's like you buy a Tesla and then 2 months later you start noticing little things, and then another 2 months of production goes by, even little things changes. Like we just noticed an October built car had a different trunk latch sound
completely
than this
different
car. And it's just, things that don't really matter, but Tesla's always iterating. I don't know if that means they're making them better or worse, but they're changing. So let's jump inside now because this is the one thing you get with Tesla, are just constant updates.
Well, inside the Model Y, this is very normal feeling place for me. I've got a Model 3 long range. I think Tesla does a great job of very minimal design. Nothing like you really see in the ID.4. You start feeling around, areas feel, I don't know, to me, ID.4 has some better things. This has some better areas. First off, the seats, the best in the business. I love Model 3, Model Y seats. I just think they're incredible. A little bit of nitpicks I have with these cars are especially on the door cards. This plastic in here, down at kind of the lower bits, maybe you can see it on this side, Alyssa, where Kyle's hand is down there. I feel like that feels a little bit cheaper, especially compared to ID.4, but other areas feel really good. I know you said Volkswagen, one of the best steering wheels. I think Model 3, Model Y has the best steering wheel in the business.
Interesting. I actually prefer the ID.4 steering wheel to this personally, but I do know a lot of people that love this wheel. And I do too. I like it for the application in this car. I think the ID.4 to me is a much more comfort-oriented cruiser, and this has just more broad capability. This can shred up a back road if you need it to, and so the steering wheel and just the steering ratio, the way that the car goes about its business, is a bit sportier than the ID.4 is. But sitting in here, my initial impression is I just feel like I don't want to use the word worse, but it just feels worse than the ID.4.
To be honest, I've never loved the Model Y inside because it feels like everything wrong with Model 3. They've just taken it and done this with it and done this with it and done, I don't know. I don't feel at home in this car. I think it's the seating position. You definitely sit a heck of a lot higher, I feel like, than in ID.4. I always make the connection of saying I feel like a little kid in the ID.4 with how low you can sit and you just can barely see over the steering wheel type of deal.
And it's nicer. I prefer the interior of the ID.4.
Totally.
With that said, I think think the Model Y isn't bad at all. I still love the interior in this car because it just isn't trying to do anything it's not supposed to. It's a car. It's to get you down the road, and it has tech. Here's your screen. There's no creature comforts. There's no massage. There's no frills. It has, I don't think we need to really get into it in this video, the best UI, the best software in the entire automotive business. Tesla just gets it. It has all the EV stuff you could ever want, all the ease of use, the route planning, the charging network, the blah, blah, blah. But, in terms of feel and fit and finish, first of all, I'm sitting much higher in this car than I would have in the ID.4. And everything feels okay. I mean, it really doesn't, there's nothing plasticky to me that doesn't feel great. And in fact, there's probably less to touch in this car just because there's less to interact with. Therefore, there's less opportunity to feel harsh plastics and weird things. So the one thing that doesn't feel nearly as nice as ID.4 is the door thunks. The way that, in the ID.4, I feel like I'm in a cocoon. It's quiet. It's a well-built German engineered thing. This definitely feels a little bit chintzier, I would say. But not in a bad way. I still think it's a car I recommend to almost everyone. This is at the top of my EV recommend list.
Totally agree. Like I said, I think a few nitpicks I have, there's a lot of great feeling things. Steering wheel feels great. Seats feel great. Love the integration here. I know you're not a huge Alcantara suede guy.
No.
I love it here. I think it really makes the doors accented nice. This kind of stuff feels nice, which we'll touch base on over in the Ariya, having this kind of center console area here. My biggest complaints with Tesla interiors are the plastics on the side of the seat where you're moving your seating controls. I think those feel very cheap, and the bottom of the doors. I think they could work on that a little bit, but love the layout in here. I mean, you have nice accents. They don't feel super cheap, but it also doesn't feel ultra premium.
Nothing here is cheap, I should say. There are certain aspects of the Ariya that we'll find that are way nicer and way worse. This is very much in the middle. The ID.4 actually spreads out a little bit. There's some worse materials, there's some nicer materials. But I think the big question at the end of the day is, this is more money than the ID.4. With the tax credit situation, I think it still is more money.
They get both the same tax credit, 75 federal, and then depending on your state. Here in Colorado, we get about 2,000.
Right. So this is a more expensive product, but not by much.
Thousand.
It's very close.
Yep.
Does it feel more expensive sitting here versus sitting in the ID.4?
I don't know. It's a very subjective thing.
But to you,
I would say yes.
Okay.
I mean, just to me, my Tesla feels like a more premium experience. I think that has to do with UI, how it makes it like the integration on the phone, on the app, and everything like that. The phone app on that is the most garbage thing I've ever used.
Oh, it's terrible.
That type of integration, in my opinion, makes it feel very premium, but it's a very tech-forward car.
But if you just closed your eyes and sat in here versus sitting in the ID.4, which is the more premium experience?
I don't know. I have things that I like and don't like about both.
Okay, so maybe equal.
Yeah, I would say equal.
Okay, and I'm sort of in the same camp. To me, I think just sitting in the ID.4, maybe just the way that the ID.4 smells compared to Model Y, or just like other little things, I don't know, it's nicer to me.
Yeah. Well,
but I'm sitting on the passenger side, not the driver, of course.
I will say, though, Y compared to ID.4, I like the ID.4 a lot better. ID.4 to Model 3 feels very different to me because it's a very different driver's feel, how you sit. I don't like the seating position in this car at all.
I agree. You sit too high in Model Y. If they could just remove the risers and put this thing on the ground.
It has like a 6-inch riser on the bottom. It looks hilarious.
Every car is way too high for a seating position. So, okay, these are the baselines. These are the known quantities. This is what our audience, they've probably been in these cars before. And they're very different, but I would say almost equal on the same material touch points. That's the wild card.
Yes.
I have not spent much time in the Ariya, so let's go over there and play around with that. But before we do that, should we do the door thunk test?
Yeah, let's do that as we walk over there.
Okay. So the door thunk test is pretty important because to me, it's like when you close the door in a G-Wagon or my Range Rover, you get this bank vault feeling. And it gives, I think, me the subconscious feeling of I bought a really well-crafted product. So we're going to start here with the Model Y. It's important to mention that this is a frameless situation. It is double pane glass. I believe only in the front.
Correct.
But let's hear how this sounds. really good.
It's actually really solid. Window goes up nice and quick. Working as a detailer, I find a lot of windows are not actuated that quickly. One being Ford Bronco. No, that's a weird thing. You go to grab this and the window sticks every single time.
Same with the Taycan that I've been spending a lot of time with. I just feel like I'm going to rip the glass if I go quickly.
100%. This feels super nice.
Tesla's really got it down where as soon as you open the door handle, the windows are down, which is great. That is a solid door thunk. You can definitely tell it's frameless.
Yep.
It's not the best door thunk in the business, but I would say it's equivalent to the cost of the car. Feels fitting.
Totally agree.
On to the VW ID.4. In case any of you didn't know what kind of car this was, by the way, it is a Volkswagen ID.4. Not that it says it right there. Why would you get that as your license plate?
I just love it. So, and here on the ID.4, I know your biggest complaint on the outside of this car is door handles, and I would tend to agree with you. You never feel like you're really grabbing the right area. They're kind of goofy feeling. So the door handle doesn't move, but it's got this kind of soft close area there, and I've felt it to where you hit it on the front more towards the back and it never opens right away.
Yeah, I'm pushing all the way on the front, it won't open.
Correct.
I'm pushing in the middle now, it will.
Yep.
But it just feels like I'm deflecting the surface every time. And if you pull hard enough, and it might be only when it loses 12 volt, you can open it and get a key in there.
Correct.
So it is feel like you're pushing against something every time, or pulling against something that shouldn't be open. So that's the one thing I don't like about these cars.
Sure. Door thunk, I think this is the best out of all three of them.
Okay.
Closing it just has a nice thud.
What is this screeching noise?
I don't know if that's wind or if that's a vent opening somewhere down there.
I don't think it has active aero, but
Not sure.
it is the Volkswagen.
Definitely is.
It's chirping
Definitely
at
is.
us.
Something that I've been seeing a lot in Rivians with those front flaps up front.
Yeah.
And those things really make a lot of noise. But yeah.
No question, this being, again, a solid situation. That's a, German door close.
Yes. It feels really, really, really
And
good.
the door is heavy and it feels awesome. Now to the Ariya, we'll come over to the driver's side. This is a Nissan product. And I just want to talk for a second about my expectation versus the first time I grabbed the door on this car, which is Nissan Leafs, Altimas, which are the fastest cars you can buy, of course. Really anything has a very tin canny feel. Even the Armada, it's like you open the door handle and you hear a ting when you open it all the way, and then the door is really tin canny. This solid door, plastic door, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Nope, they're actually metal.
They are metal.
Yep.
Okay, but really nicely dampened metal.
No, it feels great.
Unlike any other Nissan. When I open the door handle all the way, I don't get a very metal ting, a little tin can feel. It's a plastic stopper, which actually to me feels okay. It's not the best, but better than any Nissan. This is what I thought. The Ariya gave me the best impression when I first opened and closed the door. Because when you close the door on this, solid, I think.
It is.
It's nowhere near what the ID.4 is, and I know we have the window down right now, so it's not apples to apples, if you will. But just in my impression, way better than any other Nissan product, and I've driven them all, including GTR. That's a good door thunk. The door has a lot of weight to it, unlike pretty much any other Nissan. It's not as heavy as ID.4, but they really got this right.
Totally agree.
It feels fitting of the price.
Yep.
So which wins the door thunk category? In my opinion, and I'd like to hear yours, Colton, the Model Y loses. This comes second place, and the ID.4 feels the most premium, which is coincidentally the cheapest car here.
The only thing I wish the ID.4 had was the door handles off of the Y.
No one will want that.
I would love that. I love Tesla door handles. I know most people actually really don't. I really dislike the door handles on this. I know you disagree.
I like the door handles on this.
To me, they just feel like they're taken off an Altima. I know you talked about but they look aesthetically like that. I like that these are sleek. You get that EV feel to it. I think then you go on the opposite end of the spectrum with like Ford Mach-E, the weirdest door handles in the world.
Well, I think it's actually a selling point for the Ariya's target audience.
It could be, for sure.
Which I've never seen someone under the age of 65 driving an Ariya yet.
Besides us.
Besides us. That's not a knock. It's just saying this car seems to appeal to old people. You can pull the door handle and it works normally.
Yep.
That to me is nice. And you don't have to do any stupid fiddly stuff like you do with the Model Y. All right, I'm going to have you sit in the driver's seat again, and I'm going to get in the passenger seat. Let's jump inside and see. So do you think, I didn't get your opinion on door thunk. Sorry, I forgot to get that.
Sorry, door thunk, Volkswagen, the best, this the second best, and Model Y.
So we agree on that.
Yep.
Okay, let's jump in the back. Right off the bat, does the Ariya feel cheaper or more expensive than the Model Y?
I think it looks more expensive. I think it feels cheaper.
I actually think it feels and looks cheaper.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at this and it's very clearly not wood.
I have a hard time with it. Like, again, my big thing with this car, I like the aesthetics. I think the interior looks cool.
Okay.
When you start touching things, though, is where this thing to me really, really starts falling apart. Yeah, this is one of the funniest things I've seen on this car.
Here's what I want you to do. Put your knee like where you'd normally be driving, right about here.
Oh my God.
I let off. It didn't stop. It is
wow.
So this is a tray that comes out on the top trim Ariya, or the higher trim ones. It has the strongest electric motor ever and the sharpest corners I've ever felt.
And literally the cheapest. Like, what is this?
So I think starting off in the Volkswagen and the Tesla, they are definitely not luxury products. They are not S-Class levels. They're not, anywhere near the top end of automotive. But there's nothing offensive in them, right? There's nothing that goes, oh, this is really bad. I've already found like 5 things that are really bad in this.
Totally agree.
And the first thing are, the seats are great when you touch them. Like, it feels like a very high quality seat. I actually quite like them. The leather's really nice. I like the blue leather. I think it's funky. This I really hate, but I know you like Alcantara.
It's not that I necessarily like it, but I think from the lower trim one I saw, it's a nice way to upclass it, I think, in a very inexpensive way. I actually think that Tesla's done that in the past, where you remember the old Tesla door cards used to have, either if you had a white interior, they had a white kind of leather piece. I think the Alcantara suede made it feel a little bit nicer. That's my impression. An easy way to kind of upclass a car a little bit.
Well, as it should be for $60-something thousand. I'm not saying it doesn't look more premium. I just don't like the material. But then, like, instantly offended by this.
Yeah.
The cheapest plastic speaker grills.
The whole dash is that way too.
Even little things like the seat controls. So this is something that I don't really know how to quantify, but every time I get into a very well-engineered vehicle where like 50 Klauses, went crazy over the volume knob waiting, you know what I mean? When I push the seat in a certain direction, they ramp up to speed. They go zzz, and you go back and they go zzz. This is just like full send.
Yeah.
And just to have this big thunk and you can feel the cranking current of the motor request in the seat shows like, okay, that's how every Japanese product has been, even Lexus. And to me, it's very not premium to get stuff like this, especially for 62 grand. Like, the Tesla seat controls are obviously coded and tuned in-house. They'll even let you know if you move the seat too much over a period of time and have to wait for the motor to cool down so you don't burn out the motor. Like, Tesla goes super deep nerd. And to me, this just feels like that's a dead giveaway that I'm not into it. The next thing are these plastic pieces in the doors. Makes the Model Y feel like the most premium vehicle
100%.
ever. And it is important to note that this is a pre-production example that isn't totally production ready, but you've experienced a production level vehicle and it was the same.
So the cheaper version that I had, the Venter Plus front wheel drive, big battery pack, basically the only difference that I could feel in this car was you have this being powered, this whole center console being powered, which is, I don't know really why you want that.
We're just slow movement.
Yeah, we're going to take that away. You've got Alcantara here and leather, but these door cards, identical. So you've got a car that's quite a bit less with the same materials nearly everywhere, and they really don't feel nice.
Right. So everyone's saying that this is going to be a much nicer vehicle than the base one. Once you're in the seat,
it does. When you're looking this way, it doesn't feel any different.
No, not at. I can't imagine it would. And I hate the steering wheel materials. Look at how cheap this looks.
Really? You think this looks cheap?
I think this looks terrible.
Okay,
I think
interesting.
It looks greasy, and I can already see the stretch marks in the leather. And to me, it screams inexpensive steering wheel. It actually screams like Japanese upmarket, which to me, I guess, pisses me off because it's not true luxury. And it's same as like Infiniti or Lexus would have this.
Going back to aesthetic wise, it looks okay-ish. and then you start feeling it, and it's like, that's where I just think that's where this car really falls apart. Everything you start touching in here, these buttons feel super weird when you start playing with them. You're driving down the road, you go to touch them, you don't know if you've touched it or not.
They should have a little haptic in there.
They do have haptic, but they're just, you go to touch it and it's not a physical button. These, interestingly enough, feel a heck of a lot better. I don't know why that is.
I really hate these.
Yeah.
And I noticed just sitting in the car earlier, I put my elbow down with this all the way back, and I was changing the drive mode with my elbow.
Right. And then you have areas like this. You know, I mentioned that in the Tesla, how nice that slides. This is, it like jerks as it goes back. It really doesn't feel nice.
It's grabby and not consistent feeling, and again, doesn't feel that well engineered as to where it needs to be, especially for 60-something thousand, which most of them won't be this price. Even if this car was 55,000, the same gripes I had would stay, which is you get nicer materials than the other cars. The leather in this car, which again, we're not a fan of, but it is a higher quality material than the others. You get visually, I would say, a very attractively designed interior.
Totally agree.
But then you start touching stuff and you're like, oh my God, this feels like crap. Like, especially up here, really not good. Now, where your hands will touch, the window switches are this piano black piece.
Hate it.
I think it actually doesn't feel that. It could feel a lot worse.
So yeah, this is always the funny thing I say with gloss black stuff. It looks nice until you breathe on it or touch it, and then it just looks like the worst thing ever.
Sure.
Does it look better than these cheaper plastic pieces over here?
Yes.
Sure. But then immediately it just really doesn't feel good. I do want to show some clips of showing the actual door, showing the seat controls, because you feel like you can rip the seat.
Well, we'll show it when we get out of the car. We'll point all that out. And there's one last thing I think we should mention in this car, which is most of our viewers, I think, are OCD like we are, which is this no longer lines up when you adjust the air vents. So for me, they all have to be facing the correct orientation.
Mm-hmm. And notice here, the button doesn't even line up. Like if you're going to make this super straight line that you're going to be visually looking at 24/7, this has to line up.
And because this one's a pre-production car, and the one you sampled, was it the same way?
It was about the same.
Okay.
Yeah, if not, this one maybe even a little worse.
Okay. Yeah.
Or the first one being a little worse. Yeah, sorry.
Well, usually the press cars are gone through.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think it's not bad in here. It doesn't give me the feeling of quality, of well-builtness, of solidity that either of the other two give. It has the worst electronic backup situation.
I think the keys are out there.
Okay, well, I'll do that in my full review. I'm going to talk about this mirror. This is definitely straight off of Alibaba.
100%.
Like, there's no way around it. And to me, it just, it screams Nissan. And they had so much of an opportunity to design this car from scratch and make every bit a little bit nicer than they've ever done, especially considering the premium that this car is going for. And to me, it's easily the least premium experience out of these three.
Yeah, with nearly 20,000 more than the ID.4 as far as dollars with tax credits. And then, 10 to 12-ish thousand depending on spec of a Model Y. And that's just crazy.
I'm not really finding and as I start to evaluate the car as a whole, I'm not really finding the one thing that it does so much better than any other of these cars to justify that cost difference. It's certainly not the fit and finish. The fit and finish is surprisingly good compared to other Nissan products I've tested, but that doesn't still put it in the category of these two.
No.
Let's go outside here. Let's show the viewers what we're talking about on the side. I think could be quite interesting. I'll grab the door for the back seat. Camera operator, thank you very much. Right this way.
And while you're back there, show the ISOFIX points in the rear.
Oh, this is a blatant issue in the car. By the way, rear door opens quite wide, but take a look at this right here. This is Velcroed, and it is this flap in the seat to get to your ISOFIX points. And if you don't get it just right, Velcro sticking out, and like you have this really nice leather material, but then crap like that just gives it this very much an economy car solution to a problem, which is not very premium. Even so far as to the buttons for the heated seats in the back. Model Y doesn't have rear heated seat buttons. It does have heated seats.
Right.
ID.4 doesn't have rear heated seats at all. These buttons almost make it worse. Like they're
Totally
the
agree.
cheapest feeling buttons. And I have to complain for a second. It's 2023. Everyone's going USB-C.
Yep.
Why is there even an option for USB-A in this car?
And the other gripe I have, just quickly before you close that back door, the back of the seats. That is the worst feeling material
This feels terrible.
It's horrible.
Nails on a chalkboard. Wow, that's really bad. That's really bad.
Yeah, totally agree.
So there's a lot of good here, but
Yep.
it's really good on top of relatively base feeling car, in my opinion. So this is what you were talking about, right, Colton?
Yep. Just, I mean, put your nails over that. Like, it
That's
is
bad.
the scratchiest feeling, chalkboardy feeling.
And again, just to double check, the production customer sold vehicle that you tested was the same material.
Correct. And it had a different piece in this area where the Alcantara suede is, and a little bit different material here, but the rest of the door card completely the same. Same with the dash. This was all the same down here, had a different panel here, but the rest of it exactly the same. So it's like really interesting. I want you to also, Kyle, play with those switches there on the side.
Right here, these ones,
Yep.
right? But this is what I've noticed.
Yeah. So you go to pull that up, and
you
it's
move
just
it, and you just feel deflection with just the slightest little push on the switches. That's the kind of stuff that just doesn't give this carved from one, this solid approach, which, to be totally honest, there's room for improvement in these cars too. Even for the price, I find issues that I'm like, I wish they didn't cut costs there. It's just maybe 10 times as many areas around this whole vehicle that feel cheap. Even so, like to the point where when you put on parking lights, for example, in this car, when you cycle the headlights through, they didn't put a little chip in to delay it when you're cycling through. So if you go from, parking lights auto to off, you go past the point where you go past the on and the headlights kick on for a second. And I'm like, well, just put a little half a second delay. It's like when you shut a car off and the windshield wipers don't return to stop. You're like, they saved money here.
Yep.
I just get that feeling throughout this whole car that when you compare it and you benchmark it against these two products, especially this one that has way too many modules and way too many convoluted things, they just missed the mark on quality.
Yeah, totally agree.
And like on paper, it might actually have more stuff. It's got Napa leather. It's got the moving center console. The sales pitch for this car is probably easier.
Totally
But
agree.
if you get out of this and into that, there's no way this feels like a better product.
It was really interesting, actually. I've never really done that, is sit in this car, sit in the Y, and then come back to the Ariya. You immediately got in this and were like, really feels cheap. Actually, something interesting. So I took my wife Jess out in this. She drives this Volkswagen ID.4 as her car, and I asked her, what do you think this car costs? And her comment was, can't be more than 45 grand. And
wow.
She is just like, she's not super OCD like I am, like you are, but just like her impression, she's been in expensive cars. She's been in a lot of different vehicles. She got in this and was like shocked at the price point of it. And I think that's really the interesting thing to know on this. I can't imagine if this car was more competitive pricing in this, I think you could forgive a lot of that, but at such a high ask. And when all the commenters were like, you have to try the big boy spec, I was like, okay, I want to be objective with it, but when I get in here, I don't feel premium.
I mean, I would love it for people who disagree with us to really like come and show us what you're seeing, because while, like I mentioned, there are materials, there are bits of the Ariya that are nicer. It just goes so far in the other direction to not nice, where you can't justify, I think, even the $55,000 price for a mid-spec.
Totally agree.
Now, when you start getting into the base trims, that could be interesting. I'd like to play around with that, but you said that felt like terrible with the cloth seats.
I think anytime you put like very cheap feeling, rental car feeling like cloth seats in a car, it just immediately you get in, everything feels scratchy, and you're just like...
You're like, why did I work so hard for this?
Yeah, exactly. And at that point, that car with cloth seats was still more expensive than the ID.4 because you get a tax credit on this.
Wow, that's incredible. So the Nissan Ariya has to be a lease special. They need to find a way to make this car lease out well.
Yeah.
That's like they did that with the Leafs. They had the $89 a month lease deal, which was awesome. Hopefully they can get this at like $399, $499 a month, a little bit down, something like that could be a really good price point. And then at that point, like you can forgive it. But if you're just writing a check for 62 grand and dumping it out of your account, dude, I don't.
Yeah.
That's not the move. And with the extra, I would say, materials, quality, things that come in the top spec one, the price also goes up. And that means we're more stringent. Yeah.
Like seriously, substantially. I think the real disappointment with this car that I have, I think it's striking. Like I think it really looks good, especially in this color. It just looks so nice. You get a really nice vibe from the front end, very angular, very sporty. and then you start getting inside and it's just such a letdown. So I don't know, that's my impression at
Totally
least.
agree. I think it's the best looking car on the outside. It might even have the most range. I don't know. We have to do some testing. It's got the biggest battery.
Yeah,
so
I'm not sure.
That will all come soon. And you know, my first initial impression of Ariya, to leave it from my side, is for a Nissan, I was impressed with how nice it was. In the context of its competition, it still falls short when you start, you know, using it.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree.
Well, that's it.
Thanks for joining us on another out of spec detailing video.